MLB Free Agency is getting completely out of hand. Signing after signing, trade after trade. Was sick for a few days. Thought it'd be the best if you guys didn't hear me super nasally. Still a little bit, but we have a lot of stuff to talk about. We're going to grade all the big signings, all the big trades that happened within the past couple of days. Why not start off with this one? Maybe the biggest one of, certainly. ShaMana is back with the New York Mets on a 3-year deal. We know it's worth $75 million, and there is deferred money. I love it. ShaMana was huge for the Mets down the stretch last year. This is a guy, remember, that we talked about as having Cy Young potential back in Oakland in a couple years with the Giants and Padres, which he showed flashes, but ultimately didn't seem quite like the same guy. Well, in 2024, he transitioned to a sinker primary pitcher. He's employing that very short arm angle, kind of Chris Sale-esque out of the left-handed slot, and it worked wonders for him. He looked really good. I think this is a great deal, especially in the current heavily inflated starting pitcher market as we know it. Getting Manaea, a 32-year-old who will turn 33 pretty soon here, at 3 years, it's not too long of a commitment, $75 million. I think this is a fantastic signing. The Mets lost, of course, Severino, who went to the A's. Jose Quintana, another guy out of that rotation so far. Doesn't look like they'll bring him back. They brought in Clay Holmes. They brought in Frankie Montas. I think this rotation is good enough. You know, signing Juan Soto is one thing, but if you don't have somebody good at throwing the ball, it really limits how effective that addition can be. So I love it. I'm going to give ShaMana going to the Mets an A. Glad to see him back in Queens. The Mets made a great move. Walker Buehler is not going back to the Dodgers. He is a Boston Red Sox. Now, the market on Buehler was kind of interesting. You know, the Dodgers, of course, went after and got Blake Snell, which was huge for them. They're expecting guys like Shohei Ohtani, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, Tyler Glasnow to be back healthy pitching next year. So you thought maybe there might not be a spot for Walker Buehler, but there was also clearly interest from the Dodgers to bring him back because Buehler, when he was healthy, perennial Cy Young candidate. I mean, he was so dominant for the Dodgers, and he was on such a good team. I don't think he got quite as much recognition as he deserved, but Buehler was one of the best pitchers in baseball before coming down with his second elbow injury. He was out until last year, and he didn't pitch a ton, didn't pitch very great until the postseason. You know, when the Dodgers needed him most, there's Walker Buehler getting the save in Game 5 of the World Series, clinching another one for LA. Buehler to the Red Sox, 1 year, $21.05 million. That's exactly how much a qualifying offer cost. The Red Sox extended a qualifying offer to Nick Pivetta, who declined it. So from the Red Sox perspective, they're signing a pitcher for qualifying offer money, but they're also getting the compensatory pick for Nick Pivetta signing presumably elsewhere. It doesn't look like that he'll be going to the Red Sox. So getting Walker Buehler here for 1 year, $21 million. He can also earn $2.5 million more based on performance incentives. I think that's a pretty fair deal. Ultimately, Walker was only going to get a 1-year deal. Just was not going to get a multi-year contract. Kind of similar situation with Shane Bieber with the Guardians. You know, maybe he could have gotten a 1+1, but this is a straight up 1-year deal. I like it. I think Walker Buehler's got a lot left in the tank. If you look at the Red Sox rotation, of course, they went after Garrett Crochet. They made that trade a little bit ago. They're kind of in an interesting position right now because they've got a full 5 rotation that you trust on opening day. I'd say Crochet, Houck, Buehler, Bayo, and Crawford is a very good rotation. And they've got guys like Lucas Giolito, Garrett Whitlock, who are going to be coming back from injury. Patrick Sandoval, who we'll talk about later here. Almost makes you wonder if there's opportunity for someone to be traded there. But again, 1-year deal. It's a short-term commitment for Walker Buehler. If he's not as good as you think he is, it's $21 million down the drain, but I think this is an excellent move to help you compete this year. Overall, really big fan of this one. I'm going to give Walker Buehler, going to the Red Sox, an A-. We've got a trade here. The Phillies are landing Jesus Luzardo from the Marlins, and they're sending over Starlin Caba and Amarion Boyd. And this is a very interesting trade. The Phillies really have a pretty good rotation, right? They've got Wheeler and Nola at the top, and then Christopher Sanchez and Ranger Suarez. The problem is the fifth starter kind of created some public outburst when Taijuan Walker kept getting opportunities and he pitched very poorly last year. Well, they've got a full five in the rotation now, and probably one of the best, if not the best rotations. I think the Dodgers currently have the best staff in baseball, but the Phillies have an excellent five, and, postseason, that might shrink down to four. But I think Luzardo's got a great case and an opportunity to earn one of those top spots from the Phillies. He had a bad last year. He didn't pitch a whole lot. He ended up having back issues that stopped his season in, I believe, June, and he didn't pitch anymore. And really, it was a couple bad starts. It was like 2 or 3 outings where he gave up like 7 runs, and that really inflated his ERA. Because for the most part, he was otherwise dealing. He kind of looked like regular Jesus Luzardo as we had known him in Oakland and then Miami. His velo was down, kind of makes you think he was dealing with more elbow problems than it first led on, because he also missed a couple of starts earlier in the year due to elbow soreness. I don't think he was at 100%. I think there's very high reason to believe Luzardo will be better for next year now that he's had chance to get rested. The back and elbow issues should be lightened up, and he's got 2 years. He's on arbitration 3, which technically he gets 2 more years of arbitration before he's an unrestricted free agent, and he's a very affordable pitcher for a team that's already above the luxury tax and doesn't want to go to Mets level. So a really good pickup from the Phillies standpoint, and the Marlins are getting Starlin Caba and Amarion Boyd. Now, Caba is the number 81 prospect in all of baseball. He's only 19 years old, and he's pretty small. Right now, just 5'9", 160 pounds. He's a switch-hitting shortstop, well known for his glove. That's his best tool for sure. He's got quite a lot of speed, and he is kind of unorthodox in the sense that he walks more than he strikes out, but he doesn't have any pop. I mean, through 401 at-bats, he's hit 2 home runs, he has 9 doubles, and 3 triples. His slugging percentage is minuscule. It is very small, and I have watched a decent bit of Starlin Caba. He's got a swing that just isn't very conducive for power, at least right now. He's only 19 years old. That's definitely something that they are going to work on with him, especially gap power. He's got the speed. He needs to be able to hit the ball into the gap. If nothing else, turn singles into doubles, and you can help contribute that way. But he's a guy with a high floor because he does walk quite a bit, and he plays very, very good defense. I mean, he's a good prospect. He's 19 years old. Give him a couple of years in the minors, give him a chance to add some weight. I think he's going to be a good player. And then Amarion Boyd as well. He's another guy that doesn't really hit for a ton of power. He's very fast, stole a bunch of bases in the minors, plays pretty good defense in the outfield. I don't love the return. I think they probably could have gotten better. Again, I've criticized the Marlins quite a bit for tearing things down very prematurely. I know that's their thing. They've done it. In 97, a lot of the players key to the World Series win were gone, and then they won again in 2003, did it again, but then they didn't make the playoffs again until 2020. And they finally make the playoffs for the first time in a full season, and they trade Luis Ariz about a month in. And then, more players leave. Berger's gone. Jazz Chisholm's gone. Pretty much everybody not named Sandy Alcantara and Jesus Luzardo were gone. And now Luzardo leaves after a not great 2024 where he was riddled with injury. 2 years of team control, very cheap. I just think you give a chance for Luzardo to pitch effectively to begin 2025, and that significantly increases potential trade value Overall, I don't hate the return, but I think they could have gotten more. For the Phillies, I'll give them a B+. There are some things to be concerned about with Luzardo. He's not without flaw. And for the Marlins, I'm going to give them a C. I'm disappointed. I thought they could have done a lot better. We'll talk another trade here. The Nationals are getting their first baseman that they've been rumored on for quite a while. It's Nate Lowe from the Rangers in exchange for Robert Garcia. Now, the Nationals were a team that were supposedly in that Pete Alonso race. Ultimately, they're no longer, as they get Nate Lowe, who I like. He's got a very great skill at walking. He draws the base on balls quite often, which again raises his floor and has helped out for the fact that he's not a tremendous power hitter. He hit 20-plus home runs in 2022. But these last 2 years, he just hasn't had that big power stroke traditionally from a first baseman. He was a pretty high prospect with the Rays, got shipped off to Texas, probably a little bit too early, but, the Rays are very aggressive with their trades, as that's where they make most of their roster moves. And Nate Lowe's had a good career as a Ranger, World Series champion. He's probably best known for his glove, I would say. He's one of the best defensive first basemen in the game, which I think with a young infield that the Nationals have is definitely going to be a plus. Nate's a pretty solid hitter. I'd like to see him get the ball in the air a little bit more often. I know we just talked about his power, but I think Washington playing at that stadium is going to help his swing, and he's a good defender. Yeah, I like it overall. I believe he's got 1 year of team control until he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. The Rangers, who added Jake Burger, they went ahead and made that trade about a week or so ago. Presumably he could play first base. They don't need Nate Lowe. And instead, they're going to grab Robert Garcia. Where instead of me trying to say something intelligent, I'm just going to show you his Baseball Savant page because it has a lot of red. Robert Garcia has the potential to be a truly, truly dominant lefty reliever within that Rangers bullpen. And you look at the stuff, he's gross. You look at a near 30% strikeout rate. The whiff rate, also at 30%, quite high, but the chase rate and the fact that he does not give up that many walks, that's pretty rare for a left-handed reliever. You don't see that too often. He has pretty good command of the strike zone. Granted, this is all in, sub 100 innings. It's not like he's pitched a ton in his MLB career, but his underlying data, this goes to show, is a lot better than a 4.2 ERA, which you might just initially see at the surface. Robert Garcia's got what it takes to be a stud, and, I ultimately like this trade for both sides. The Nationals get a good first baseman, and the Rangers are going to get a potential dominant reliever about as cheap as possible, minimum level, that could be on their team for years to come. Speaking of the Rangers, they signed Joc Peterson, 2-year, $37 million deal with an opt-out after this year. I think Joc has got to be one of the most underrated free agents this offseason. He's, of course, explicitly a DH at this point. He's definitely gotten a bit wider throughout the last couple of years, and he's not as fast. He used to be a pretty solid defender for the Dodgers back in the day, but those days are no more. He's a DH. Maybe he could potentially learn first base, although, like we said, I think Jake Burger probably can handle that position for the Rangers. But Texas certainly could have a potential logjam. They've got a lot of guys that they want to get on the field, but only 9 spots to fill. Joc Peterson, these last 2 years, has been one of the most prolific walkers within baseball, and that's something that's looked upon very highly. Having good command of the plate is key, and it really helps when you've got a guy with a quick, strong bat like Joc Peterson, who consistently has some of the best hard-hit exit velo rates within Major League Baseball. He was towards the very top, I believe, 95th percentile in ex-WOBA, expected weighted on base average, which goes to show he's hitting the ball hard, he's hitting it in good places, and he's also earning those walks. I believe about a 13% walk clip this past year. This is a very good deal for the Rangers. They're adding more offense, which is always a good thing, and it could potentially be a one-year commitment. Ultimately, I don't think Jock's play is going to degrade much. If anything, he's slowly been increasing. And now he's going to Texas in a lineup which is going to have plenty of protection for him. I like this deal a lot for both Jock and the Rangers. I think it's going to be a slam dunk. We'll give this an A- grade. Max Kepler is going to the Phillies. This hurts me. As a Twins fan, Max is our longest tenured Twin. Fun little story. We went to a game back in 2019. Twins Red Sox went into the 18th inning. Max walked it off. That was one of 4 walk-offs that I was at in person that I got to see. Big fan of Max Kepler. 1 year, $10 million, short, cheap commitment. I like it. Most of these signings I'm a fan of. These ball clubs do their research. 2019, of course, Bomba squad with the Twins, the team that set the record for the most home runs by a team in a single season until the Braves tied it in 2023. Kepler contributed to about 30 of those long balls for the Twins. But since then, he's been a little up and down, right? He's had some good years, some bad years. 2023 was one of those up years, and then last year he had an OPS sub 700. Ultimately, Kepler has changed as a player. He used to be, consistently a versus righties killer. I'd watch time in, time out. When he'd come up to bat, late game situation against a lefty, Rocco would sub him out because he didn't trust him. A lot of lefties have trouble hitting other left-handed pitchers, but he's since grown. Actually, these last 2 years, he's been very solid against lefties, and this year, he hit southpaws better than he did righties. Now, is that what the Phillies want? I'm not sure. The Phillies have an outfield. They've got guys like Brandon Marsh, Johan Rojas in there. Of course, Nick Castellanos is the right fielder. And I think that's probably where Kepler's going to play. That's where he played for the Twins. Castellanos, I think if the Phillies could get out of that contract, they probably would. He's owed $20 million each year for the next 2, $40 million in total. And Castellanos, bad defender. I know he's had a couple big plays and postseason moments, but Nick Castellanos, the metrics show, he's either the worst or second worst defender at right field from 2022 to 2024. Max Kepler's consistently been a good graded right fielder. He's never graded as a below average right fielder. And I think there's a possibility that they platoon the two a little bit. Ideally, you never have Castellanos in the field, just like they did with Schwarber. So limiting how often Castellanos is in the outfield, let him have his at-bats against lefties, because that's the side he hits best, and hopefully Kepler can go back to hitting righties really well. 1 year, $10 million, that's a great price for a platoon hitter in today's age. Now, it's just on Kepler to start hitting righties a little bit better. Ultimately, pretty big fan of this one. I think he'll give the Phillies a solid B- for this. I like the idea, but I'm a little bit worried about the execution. Patrick Sandoval, another one of those starting pitchers going to the Boston Red Sox on a 2-year, $18.25 million deal, but he's going to earn just over $5 million for this year and then about $12 million for 2026. And that's mainly because Sandoval is going to miss most of the year due to injury. Nobody really knows, but probably second half or maybe even a little bit into the second half, he could be back. So, the money that they're spending on him this year, not very much. Hopefully he could come back down the stretch. Patrick Sandoval had a couple good years with the Angels. 2022, I think, was probably his best one. And since then, he's had some rough times, of course. Sandoval, I think, has a lot of promise. He's got a very good changeup. He's deadly against lefties. The problem is he's really not good against righties, particularly these last couple of years. He's got hurt bad, and they consistently pull the ball in the air. At Fenway Park, that's not a great mix. So I think there's definitely some cause for concern there, especially on top of the fact that he's coming off a torn UCL last year. But it's really not a very expensive move. Ultimately, if he's not good, they can probably part ways with him fairly cheaply. And maybe there's a chance that he could be a reliever. We talked about, just how many starting pitching options the Red Sox have, especially once Whitlock comes back, although there's talk about him going to the bullpen. Giolito's going to come back at some point, probably mid-season. Sandoval's so good against lefties. I know we have the 3-batter minimum now, but maybe he could be a little bit more effective in that role. I don't know. A little bit confused by this move. I don't know if it was necessary. I like the shot because he has shown something, but I think I'll give the Red Sox a C- for this. Definitely a little worried about the fit. Oh, we talked one project pitcher. Let's talk about another one with Michael Soroka going to the Washington Nationals, 1-year deal, $9 million. Mike Soroka, coming off a bunch of injuries, the Braves parted ways with him. He came into Chicago last year, and it was pretty bad until he moved to the bullpen, where a lot of things changed, and I'm interested to see what Washington's going to do. There's discussions of him maybe going back into the rotation, or at least having a chance to earn back that role. But he was a very interesting guy in relief opportunities. He had a 15 strikeout per 9, which is crazy, right? That's towards the top of MLB history. I think the highest we've seen is about 18 strikeouts per 9. So that bodes a lot of promise. He did have higher walks, for example, but ultimately he was a pretty good reliever for the White Sox down the stretch once he was put into that role. And I think also data shows that he just really struggles, even more than most pitchers, going into that, facing the order the second time and the third time. I think he's probably best served in a bullpen role. That being said, even when he was a reliever, his numbers were good, but he didn't get that many swing and misses. He didn't get the batters to really chase too far out of the strike zone, and he had a lot of uncompetitive pitches that led to walks. So there's a project here. 1 year, $9 million. Ultimately, that's not that much money, but for teams that you don't anticipate to spend a ton of money, you just hope that this doesn't, take away from other moves that they could do. Soroka to the Nationals, I definitely think there's something there. I'll give the signing a B. Another one of my favorite moves here, Christian Walker going to the Houston Astros. They've been very active this offseason. They traded away arguably their best player in Kyle Tucker. They sent him to the Chicago Cubs. Alex Bregman, I think, is also clearly going to be gone. It's a different Astros team that's going to still have, Yordan Alvarez. It's going to have Jose Altuve. But now at first and third, it's probably going to be Christian Walker and Isaac Paredes. Now, Christian Walker, I had a whole write-up ready for him. Unfortunately, I just did get sick. Walker is a guy that I like a lot. The deal is 3 years, $60 million, which $20 million AAV for a older first baseman. He's 33 years old right now. It might seem like a lot, but I really think he's going to be worth it. He's hit 95 home runs over the past 3 seasons, and if you need more proof that he's not just withering away, he posted his highest average exit velocity numbers in 2024, and he had the 29th highest barrel rate in all of baseball. That is elite stuff, and he walks at a 10% clip. He is really good. He is a very outstanding offensive first baseman, not to mention he is the best defensive first baseman in baseball, and it isn't particularly close. He's won back-to-back Gold Gloves, and that's no fluff. He has 32 fielding run value. That's double the next candidate from 2022 to 2024 over the past 3 seasons. I love it. I understand why teams like the Yankees, who we'll talk about in a little bit here, might not want to go this 3-year commitment for higher money. I get it. But the Astros, I think this is a good fit. And no, I don't think this is necessarily Jose Abreu Part 2. Of course, they gave that aging first baseman big money in 2023, and he's no longer on the team. He made it a year and a half. The Astros are still paying Jose Abreu a good amount of money, but I think Walker is not going to have that happen to him. I'm a big fan of the signing. Whoever got him, I thought was going to get a real steal. I think universally, Christian Walker is one of the most underrated players in baseball. Going to give the signing a grade A. I love it, and I'm very excited to see him in Houston. Talked about the Yankees. They got a first baseman of their own, Paul Goldschmidt. Another former Diamondback, this one a former MVP, and this is a one-year deal worth $12.5 million. Now, the Yankees have had a very active offseason. I would say early grade, one of my favorite off seasons in baseball. They've done a great job rebounding after missing out on Juan Soto. And Paul Goldschmidt, let's be honest, he's not what he has been these past couple of years. 2024 markedly was his worst year of his career. But that's only 2 years since he was an MVP in 2022. I think from watching Goldie, his bat speed is down, and I think that's one of the things contributing to his lower walk rate. I think that was one of the biggest concerns. His strikeout rate was just so high. It was pretty much 30% in the first month of the season. It was over 30% the next month while his walk rate is diminishing. And then that walk rate went all the way down to 5% against a still well above average 26% strikeout rate. But he did start to improve things down the stretch. In the second half, he did look better. He batted .270. The strikeout numbers went down. Walks went a bit up. He had a 200 ISO, 120 WRC plus. Is that technically about league average for a first baseman? Yes. But the Yankees also had very poor production from the first base role last year with Anthony Rizzo and Ben Rice. So this is a clear upgrade. You get a guy with veteran leadership. He's got the pedigree of being a great player. And I don't know. I think guys struggle. It's difficult because you see an older player, he has a really poor first half. You write him off like, oh, he's just getting washed up, but he improved, They get him on a favorable one-year deal, so they're not going to have to worry about adding more bad money like they've got with Stanton and the Mayhew. Going to give this a B+. I think it's a good move by the Yankees. They fill a hole, and there's potential that they really hit a home run with this one. Another trade here, the Cleveland Guardians, who had already moved off of Andres Jimenez a couple weeks ago. Josh Naylor is the next guy getting dealt. He is going to the desert, filling that Christian Walker hole at first base. And the Guardians are getting back Slade Cecconi and a competitive balance pick. Not too big of a surprise here. We heard Naylor's name come up a lot in trade conversations. He's, of course, a free agent after this year, which prompts potentially a move happening, especially if the Guardians don't see extending him long term. I like Josh Naylor quite a bit. He was a 30 home run, 100 RBI guy. Not a lot of players are able to say that in any given year. That is pretty special. He was an all-star for the first time this year, and he had some big moments as a Cleveland Guardian alongside his brother Bo Naylor. I know things didn't go particularly great in the postseason. Might have soured some feelings, and Josh Naylor's not really a good defender per se, but offensively, he's a guy that gives you plus home runs. He doesn't strike out too much. Pretty solid player overall. I don't know if he's going to replicate 30 home runs, 100 RBIs every year here, but for the Diamondbacks, I think it's a good Christian Walker replacement. I think you'd 1,000% rather have Christian Walker. Immediately, that defense is going to be a noticeable downgrade, and I think you will notice just how much a good defensive 1B does matter, because it is something that doesn't get talked about too much. But it is a good bat. The D-backs were a great offensive team, and they shouldn't be coming down too far from the numbers that Walker was able to put up. I think Naylor is going to be good in that lineup. So I like it for them. As for Cleveland, of course, they only come back with Slade Cecconi and a competitive balance round B pick. Now, a lot of people don't understand that you can trade competitive balance picks, and a competitive balance B means it's a end of second round. So it'll be late 60s pick. It's not super, super high up there, but it's also not nothing, right? It's another chance to get a good youngster out of high school or college. and that's valuable for the Guardians, who are very good at developing talent. They also add in Slade Cecconi, who was a former first-round pick by the Diamondbacks, got a couple shots with them in 2023, 2024. He didn't look fantastic. He limits his base on balls, but ultimately that's his best trait to this point. The D-backs moved into the bullpen after struggling in the starting role, and he didn't really improve too much more in his 7 relief appearances. The external data doesn't show him too favorably. He's a guy that doesn't throw the ball particularly hard. He's got good accuracy, but when he does try and go outside the strike zone, batters aren't really too often chasing that. He's got very pedestrian swing and miss and chase and strikeout numbers for that matter. And despite the fact that he limits the base on balls, he also gets hit fairly hard. 10% barrel rate is quite high, and he's a guy that puts the ball in the air a lot. Cleveland was actually a pretty good spot to hit last year. I know the Guardians pitching staff is highly regarded, but I don't know. This is definitely a project. It seems mostly like they're just trying to get off of Josh Naylor and potentially replace him with another first baseman that we'll talk about in a second here. So ultimately, I like this trade more for the Diamondbacks. Let's give them a B+, and going to give Cleveland a C-. Josh Naylor's an all-star. I think they definitely could have gotten more from him than this. But it seemed like the plan was pretty clear to replace Josh Naylor. Pretty much the same money, about $12 million for Carlos Santana is what Naylor would have gotten in arbitration as last year. Third time in Cleveland, Carlos Santana's back. Of course, he began his career there, was really good, jumped ship to the Phillies for 1 year, then immediately went back, had his best year in 2019, and then he's bounced around. He was a Royal, he was a Mariner, he was a Pirate, he was a Brewer, he was a Twin last year, and ultimately he's coming back to Cleveland. I believe he's 38 years old at this point. But you know what? Last year was actually a pretty damn good Carlos Santana year. Again, as a Twins fan, I can tell you from watching pretty much every game, his first base play helped out that team so much. Of course, they've got a former Platinum Glover like Carlos Correa. He's actually a guy that tends to skip the ball a decent amount in the dirt, and a poor first baseman that has a bad job at pulling the ball out from the dirt, that causes errors. Hey, guys like Royce Lewis sometimes struggle making those big throws from third base. Santana really helped him out, and I think the defensive numbers for guys like Willie Castro, Lewis, Brooks Lee, those types, Jose Miranda, would have looked a lot worse had it not been for Carlos Santana, because he was so good. He showed a lot of range even for a 38-year-old last year. He got to some balls that most first basemen just would not be able to, and he was picking it. He was scooping it all year. Offensively, Carlos Santana also was pretty good. For the first month and a half, he was probably my least favorite player on the team. But after that, he was pretty much an 800 OPS guy. He got some home runs, some hits in big moments, and I really liked Carlos Santana as a Twin. Now, comparing him to Josh Naylor, technically by F4 standards, Carlos Santana is regarded higher by like half an F4 point, but Santana is a significantly better defensive player and not too much of a downgrade. It seems like what the Guardians might look at doing here is have Santana be the primary first baseman. He's a switch hitter, but he does hit the southpaws better. And then, against righties, Kyle Manzardo's going to get some opportunities too. I think Santana is good enough to where he deserves to be a mostly everyday player, especially with that defense. Talking about a team that just lost Andres Gimenez, a Platinum Glover, that's going to be something that Carlos Santana is going to help alleviate that pain. I'm going to give it a B-. I don't know if it's I'm going to give it a B-. I don't know if it's a massive upgrade. Definitely get better defensively. Not sure you can quite replicate his offense, but we'll see. And finally, Andrew McCutchen is back in Pittsburgh. He just reunioned in 2023. He got hurt right before the end of the year. 299 home runs. We really hoped he wouldn't end it off on that. Comes back, hits his 300th, and now he's back for another year. $5 million one-year contract. You gotta love it. Andrew McCutchen's a legend. Great to see. You gotta love it. Andrew McCutchen's a legend. Pirate fans love him. And as that team progressively gets better and a bit more competitive here, it's really cool to see him a part of that process. So, McCutchen of the Pirates, fuck it. Well, I'll give it an A. So that'll do it. A lot of moves that we had to catch up on. Video probably didn't need to be this long, but that's fine. Let me know in the comments section, what do you guys think about these moves and who's been winning the MLB offseason so far?